It's done. Everything is mine, you get nothing. My sister Vanessa laughed through the phone, her voice carrying the particular cruelty of someone who'd been planning this moment for years. Mom's lawyer just read the will. The house, the investments, the jewelry, all of it goes to me. She even specifically excluded you by name. Guess being the favorite daughter finally paid off. I stood at our mother's freshly dug grave, phone pressed to my ear, rain soaking through my black dress, trying to process words that made no sense. Our mother had loved me, had told me so in the hospital just days ago, had squeezed my hand and whispered secrets I was only beginning to understand. Then I felt something in my coat pocket, something that hadn't been there that morning. A sealed envelope that crinkled against my fingers as I pulled it out. My mother's handwriting on the front. For Natalie. Open when Vanessa shows who she really is. When I read what was inside, I understood everything. And my sister's entire carefully constructed life began to collapse. Let me tell you about the inheritance my sister stole and the truth our mother left behind. My mother, Eleanor Whitfield, died on a Tuesday in October. Pancreatic cancer, diagnosed too late, spreading too fast. She'd had 3 months from diagnosis to death. 3 months of hospital rooms, morphine drips, and conversations I'd thought were just the ramblings of a dying woman. Now I understood they were instructions. Vanessa and I had been different since childhood. She was older by 4 years, beautiful, ambitious, the kind of person who learned early how to charm parents and manipulate situations. I was quieter, more academic, content to exist in her shadow while building my own small life. Our mother had always seemed to favor Vanessa, or so Vanessa believed. The better bedroom, the newer car at 16, the larger contribution to her wedding. Vanessa counted these victories like points in a game only she was playing. I never competed because I never cared about the same things. I cared about time, conversations, the relationship beneath the material expressions. Mom and I had that. Vanessa and Mom had transactions. During Mom's final months, Vanessa visited rarely. I can't see her like that, she'd explained. It's too painful. I prefer to remember her healthy. So Vanessa remembered her healthy from a distance while I held Mom's hand through chemotherapy, adjusted her pillows at 3 a.m., listened to stories about her childhood that I'd never heard before. During those long hospital nights, Mom told me things. About Vanessa's debts, nearly $200,000 in credit cards and loans she'd hidden from her husband. About Vanessa's affair with her husband's business partner, documented in emails Mom had accidentally discovered. About Vanessa's manipulation of their father's estate years ago, convincing him to change his will while he was medicated after surgery. She thinks I don't know, Mom whispered one night. She thinks I'm too old and too sick to understand what she's doing. But I see everything, Natalie. I've always seen everything. Why haven't you confronted her? Because confrontation would warn her. And I need her to show who she really is without warning. Mom squeezed my hand. When she does, and she will, you'll need proof. I'm going to make sure you have it. The envelope had appeared in my coat pocket sometime during the funeral. I hadn't worn the coat since visiting Mom in the hospital 3 days earlier. She must have slipped it in while I was adjusting her blankets, while I was turned away, while she was supposedly too weak to move. She'd been planning even then. The letter inside was dated 2 weeks before her death. My dearest Natalie, if you're reading this, Vanessa has done something to hurt you, probably regarding the inheritance. Let me explain what's happening and what I've done about it. The will Vanessa knows about, the one that leaves everything to her, is real. I signed it 6 months ago when she brought me papers and told me it was just estate planning. I was on heavy medication and didn't read carefully. By the time I realized what I'd signed, I knew confronting her would only make things worse. So I made other arrangements. The important assets aren't in the will. They're in a trust one established 15 years ago, when your father and I first worried about Vanessa's spending habits. The house, the investments, my mother's jewelry, those are all worth less than Vanessa thinks. The real wealth is in the trust, managed by Henderson and Associates in Boston. The total value is approximately $2.3 million. You are the sole beneficiary. Vanessa doesn't know the trust exists. Neither does the lawyer who read her fraudulent will. He's her lawyer, not mine. My actual estate attorney is Margaret Thornwood at Henderson and Associates. Contact her. She has everything. The trust documents, my real will, and a file of evidence regarding Vanessa's behavior over the years. I love your sister, but I don't trust her. I never have. I love you differently. with the confidence that you'll use what I leave you wisely, that you'll build a life rather than consume one. Don't let Vanessa make you feel small, sweetheart. You were always the strong one. You just never needed to prove it. All my love. Mom. P.S. The file Margaret has includes documentation of Vanessa's fraud during your father's estate. Statute of limitations may have passed, but her husband's prenuptial agreement has a morality clause. The affair evidence alone would trigger it. Use what you need. Protect yourself. I read the letter 3 times, standing in the rain at my mother's grave. Then I called Margaret Thornwood. The attorney confirmed everything within the hour. Eleanor Whitfield had established the trust in 2008, transferring her most valuable assets out of her personal estate and into protected holdings that wouldn't be subject to standard probate. The house Vanessa thought she'd inherited was mortgaged. Mom had taken out loans against it years ago, and the equity was minimal. The investments in the will were a small brokerage account worth perhaps $40,000. The jewelry mentioned was costume pieces. The real family gems had been transferred to the trust decades ago. Vanessa had inherited approximately $50,000 in assets and $180,000 in debt. I had inherited $2.3 million. I didn't tell my sister immediately. I waited, watched her celebrate on social media. Posts about honoring Mom's memory and building on her legacy that made my stomach turn. Watched her list the house for sale, not realizing it was underwater. Watched her take the jewelry to an appraiser and emerge looking confused and angry. The first sign of trouble came 3 weeks after the funeral. Vanessa called me, her voice no longer laughing. Something's wrong with Mom's estate. The house has a mortgage I didn't know about. The investments are barely anything. And the jewelry, she said it was worth hundreds of thousands, but the appraiser says it's costume. That's terrible, I said. You don't understand, I have bills. I was counting on this inheritance. I need that money. I thought you said I got nothing and you got everything. Sounds like everything wasn't much. Silence. Natalie, if you know something. I know Mom loved us both. I know she wanted us to be taken care of. Maybe the will you found wasn't the whole picture. What does that mean? It means maybe you should have visited her in the hospital instead of waiting for her to die. Maybe you would have learned things. I hung up. The full revelation came at a family gathering 2 months later. Thanksgiving at my aunt's house, the first holiday without Mom. Vanessa arrived looking stressed, her husband Thomas tight-jawed beside her. Word had apparently spread about the estate's disappointing value. I arrived with documents. Before we eat, I announced, I need to share something about Mom's estate that Vanessa isn't aware of. Vanessa's face went pale. Mom established a trust 15 years ago. It contains the family's actual wealth, about $2.3 million. I'm the sole beneficiary. The room erupted. That's impossible, Vanessa stammered. The will you had Mom sign while she was medicated? That will covered only the assets she deliberately left in her personal estate. The underwater house, the minimal investments, the costume jewelry. I kept my voice steady. The real inheritance was never in the will at all. You're lying. I have documentation. From Mom's real attorney. The trust has existed since 2008. Mom transferred everything valuable into it specifically because she didn't trust you with family assets. Thomas was staring at his wife. What does she mean you had her sign it while she was medicated? The rest emerged in fragments. I didn't share everything that night. Some weapons are better held in reserve. But I shared enough. The fraudulent will signing. The debt Vanessa had hidden from her husband. The pattern of financial manipulation that stretched back to our father's death. Thomas demanded answers Vanessa couldn't provide. Their argument continued in the car, at home, and eventually in a divorce attorney's office. The prenuptial agreement did have a morality clause. I never had to reveal the affair evidence. Vanessa's other deceits were sufficient to trigger the terms. The divorce cost Vanessa nearly everything. Thomas's family had money. Vanessa had hidden debts. The prenuptial meant she left the marriage with exactly what she'd brought in, nothing. She called me repeatedly after the divorce was finalized, each call more desperate than the last. You destroyed my life. Mom's money should have been mine. I'm the oldest I deserved. You manipulated a dying woman into signing documents she didn't understand. You visited her twice in 3 months while I held her hand every day. You calculated your inheritance while she was still alive. I needed that money. You needed a lot of things. A conscience. Integrity. Basic human decency. Mom gave you chances to show those qualities. You failed every test. Natalie, please, I have nothing. You have exactly what you've earned. Mom saw you clearly, Vanessa. She always did. The will you stole was bait. She wanted to see if you'd actually do it, if you'd really celebrate while your sister stood at her grave. Silence. You did. You called me laughing. You said I got nothing. I was angry. I didn't mean. You meant every word. And now you're living with the consequences. I don't speak to Vanessa anymore. The $2.3 million has been invested carefully, used to fund a small nonprofit in my mother's name that provides hospice support for families who can't afford proper end-of-life care. Mom would have liked that, I think. She understood that how we treat the dying reveals who we really are. Vanessa treated her mother as an obstacle between herself and money. I treated her as a person worth knowing until her final breath. The inheritance reflected the difference. It's done. Everything is mine. You get nothing. Vanessa said those words believing she'd won. She didn't know Mom had spent 15 years preparing for exactly this moment. She didn't know the will she'd stolen was worthless. She didn't know about the letter in my pocket, the trust in Boston, the evidence Mom had gathered. She didn't know our mother at all. That was always the real difference between us.